What's going on, coders? My name is Taocoder and welcome back to Taocoder. In this video, I'll explain the difference between value types and reference types, as well as the concept of mutation and reassignments. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear understanding of these buzzwords and how they affect your code. So, let's get started. Every piece of data in programming is either a value type or a reference type. But what does this mean? Value types store data in memory directly. And every programming language has primitive data types. So when you declare a variable with any of these primitive type, the data is stored directly in memory. What does that mean? It means your variable is directly holding your data. Primitive type in programming falls under the category value types. So in JavaScript, we have primitives such as numbers, string, boolean. Of course, in other programming languages like Java, string is not a primitive. So let's see this code-wise so I have a better understanding of what I'm talking about. So imagine we have a variable, let's say name, let's say how this value. So this variable is directly holding this value. So variables are memory location, right? So this variable is holding this value. Now let's add another variable. Let's say channel. Now again, variables are memory location. So we just assign the memory location name to channel. So going by that definition, so does this mean that the memory location name is now pointing to channel? Well, conceptually, that is how it's supposed to be. But in the case of primitive types, which we are calling, which is categorized under the value type. So what is happening here is assignment by value. So the value of this variable name is copied and assigned to this channel. So any operation on either of these variable will not affect the other because it is assigned by value and it falls under the category of value type. So let's perform some operation on this variable and see if it will affect the first one. So let's do data change. Well, now let's output. So the log the name is name. Let's copy and paste this for quicker. The channel is channel. Okay, let's run this and see. Node.js. Now, as you can see, the first line 6 outputs the name is Taufik and the channel is Taocoder. So what this means is that even though the variable channel is assigned or the variable name is assigned to variable channel, the assignment is done by value. So the value inside the variable name is copied and assigned to channel. So this is like so because the variable name is of type primitive, and that is how primitives work. So primitives are under the category of value type. So everything, when it comes to assignment or assignment passing, it is done via value. Now that you have an understanding of how value types work, now let's discuss reference type. On the other hand, reference types store a reference to the memory location where the data is stored. Look at the difference. So the first one by value, the value type store the data directly. So the variable holds the data directly. Now in the case of reference type, the variable only holds a reference to the location where the data is stored. So in programming languages we have objects from predefined classes, and we have object from custom classes. So in the case of JavaScript, we have object and we have array. So this falls under the category of reference type. Now let's see this also code wise, so also have a better understanding of what I'm talking about. Now, so continue from where we stopped. So let's do some kind of categorization over here. Value types. Value types. Now let's do this one. Reference types. Now, like I said, as object in JavaScript falls under the category of reference type. Now let's create an object. Like we all know, object is this in JavaScript. An array is this in JavaScript. Now let's create a variable. Let's say obj and assign an object to it. So let's say model Toyota, and let's say year. Let's say the year is 2024. Now, just like we did here, the first thing that we did here is to create a variable. So we just created a variable and we assign an object to this. And the second thing that we did here is also we created another variable and assign we assign the value of the first variable to it. So let's do the same thing over here under the reference types. And let's say car is equal to object. But now there's a big difference between this line and this line. Now on this line, so the assignment is done by value because this is a primitive type. Now on this case, on this line, the assignment is not done by value. The assignment is done by reference because this is an object. An object data types falls under the category of reference types. But what does this reference type actually mean? So what this means is that both car and objects, they hold reference to the location where the object is stored. They both hold the same reference to where the data is stored. So the fact that they hold the reference to where the data is stored, any operation on them affects the data source because they both point to the same data source. By data source, I mean memory. That's what I mean. Pardon that language. Okay, let's confirm this I just said, just like we did over here. So let's perform an operation on the second variable car and see if that will actually affect the memory location where they both point to. Car does let's say here it's now 25. Now let's do console.log also. Say obj because it's obj. Let's say. So look at this line. We alter the property on car, not on obj. And in this case, we are outputting obj. And look at the initial value of obj. So let's run this. Let's clear this first. And voila, obj gives the updated value. So even though obj was not directly altered, but the fact that both obj and car points to the same memory location, they both hold a reference to the same memory location. So operations on them is affecting the memory location, and this is how reference types works. Now that you have a better understanding of how value types and reference types work, let's discuss mutation and reassignment. Now, what is reassignment? Reassignment simply means assigning a new value to an object, to a variable. In the context of value type under this category, so when we are doing reassignment, we are changing the value. Simple and short. So when I say reassignment, reassign. So let's say I have a variable. Let's say I'm using number this time. Let's say num is equal to 10. Now this is a variable declaration. So reassignment in this context, because this is a value type kind of variable. When I type something like this, so I'm completely changing the value of this variable, and that is simply put reassignment under the value type. So reassignment simply means changing or assigning a new value to a variable under the value type. Now under the reference type, what does reassignment mean? So reassignment simply means pointing the variable or changing the reference, yeah, that's the right word, changing the reference to another memory location. So initially, let's say we have, let's say user, let's go to name, perfect. So this is an object. So this is a reference pointing to this object. So when I'm doing a reassignment under this, because we all know this is a reference type based on what we just learned, when I change, if I want to do a reassignment on this, doing something like this, now this is a reassignment. This variable now is now pointing to a different memory location. Now we are changing the reference from this line. The reference is different. Now on this line, this variable now has a different memory location, pointing to a different memory location. That is a reassignment under value types. Now talking about mutation. So mutation applies largely to reference types, because it's about changing the value, changing values without changing the original image. Yeah, let me use that word. Without changing the actual reference. So every operation that we perform under value types will always result in a new value. So there is always reassignment, right? But under reference type, we can keep the reference as its original form, but we can change the value as much as we want. What am I saying in essence? So we have, I'm taking this one out. So let's say user. So user name is now equal to Taocoder. Now even though the value is no longer Taufik on this line, we still have the reference. The reference still remain the same. We are changing. Mutation simply means changing. So changing the content of an object simply means you are mutating it. That is that about value types, reference types, reassignment, and mutation. If you found this video very helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, keep debugging.